60 fighter jets. That is the number Tehran wants sitting on its runways within the next 2 years, and every single one of them carries a Russian pedigree that the Pentagon has quietly rated among the deadliest airborne threats on the planet. For a country whose frontline squadrons still fly aircraft older than most of the pilots strapped into them, that is not an upgrade. That is a resurrection. Let me take you back for a moment, because you cannot understand what is happening in Iranian skies today without understanding what they lost. In the years before 1979, the Imperial Iranian Air Force was not some regional afterthought. It was, by most honest assessments, the fifth most capable air arm in the entire Western world. The Shah had money, oil money, and Washington was more than willing to sell 225 F-4 Phantoms, 181 F-5 Tiger fighters, 90 Chinook heavy-lift helicopters, and then the crown jewel, 80 F-14 Tomcats, the swing-wing interceptor that America itself barely trusted to allies, armed with the long-reach Phoenix missile that could strike a target more than 100 miles away. No other country on Earth outside the United States flew that jet. Iran did. Then, the revolution came, and the door slammed shut. Overnight, the spare parts stopped. The technicians left, the training pipelines evaporated, and Iran found itself sitting on top of one of the most advanced Western air fleets ever assembled, with no way to keep it flying. What followed was 4 decades of the most extraordinary improvisation in modern military history. Iranian engineers cannibalized one aircraft to keep another airborne. They reverse-engineered components in workshops. They bought parts through black markets and shadowy middlemen at prices that would make your eyes water. And all the while, the Americans worked in the opposite direction, deliberately scrapping retired Tomcats in the Arizona desert, crushing them into aluminum blocks, specifically so that not a single bolt could ever find its way to Tehran. And here is the uncomfortable truth that this new deal exposes. It nearly worked. Because by the time you reach the present day, Iran's Air Force is, in the words of more than one Western analyst, essentially a museum. Phantoms from the Vietnam era, Tigers that first flew when the Beatles were still together, a handful of aging MiGs picked up after the Soviet collapse. During the intense fighting of recent regional flare-ups, when Israeli and American aircraft ranged almost at will over Iranian territory, the plain military assessment was brutal. Iran's manned air force, as a factor in that fight, was described as effectively non-existent. It did not contest the sky. It could not. Now, hold that image in your head, because it explains everything about the Sukhoi deal. The aircraft in question is the Su-35. In Russian service, it carries the designation Su-35S, and the West classifies it as a 4++ generation multi-role fighter. That awkward string of pluses matters. It is not a stealth aircraft, not a true 5th-generation machine like the American F-22 or F-35. What it is instead is the absolute peak of what conventional aerodynamics and raw engine power can deliver. 2 enormous engines feeding thrust-vectoring nozzles, meaning the exhaust itself can swivel to throw the jet into maneuvers that leave lesser aircraft flat-footed. It can pull turns that physically should not be possible, hang on its tail, spin in place, and recover with the throttle wide open. But the muscle is not the part that keeps American planners awake. The radar is. The Su-35 carries a passive electronically scanned array radar, a system Russian designers call the Irbis, and its numbers are genuinely intimidating. That radar can reportedly detect and track around 30 separate targets at once, and it can pick up a large aircraft at ranges approaching 250 miles. Say that out loud. A jet on the Iranian coast could theoretically be building a firing picture on an aircraft that has not yet even crossed into the region. Bolt onto that 12 hardpoints, a weapons payload of up to 8,000 kilograms, air-to-air missiles, cruise missiles, guided and unguided bombs, and you begin to understand why the United States itself has, on the record, called the Su-35 one of the most dangerous fighters in the world. The plan, as it stands, is for Iran to receive at least 60 of these aircraft, with some reports suggesting a slightly smaller initial batch of around 48. The first tranche, perhaps 20 to 28 airframes, was expected to begin arriving in a first wave, and the groundwork was already visible long before any jet touched Iranian tarmac. Pilots were logging hours on simulators. Hangars were being modified to accept the larger Sukhoi frame. This was not a rumor. This was a country physically preparing its bases for a new machine. And here is where it gets more interesting than a simple arms sale. For years, the relationship between Moscow and Tehran was transactional, cold even. Two isolated powers doing business at arm's length. That changed. Iran began supplying Russia with drones and ammunition for the war in Ukraine, and in doing so, it stopped being a customer and became a partner. The Sukhoi deal is the return handshake. Shared enemies, shared sanctions, shared incentive to bleed Western influence out of their neighborhoods. This aircraft is the physical proof that the two of them have moved past the cash register. Now let me give you a detail that only a handful of people ever caught. One that had Iranian observers genuinely scratching their heads. When Russian Su-35s escorted President Putin's aircraft on a visit through the Gulf region toward the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, something odd happened. Watchers on the ground calculated the distance those escort fighters covered, and by their math, the jets had flown roughly 150 kilometers further than the aircraft's published range should allow, and they had done it without any obvious aerial refueling. That set off a small storm of speculation. Had the Russians quietly departed from a closer airfield, shortening the actual route? Was there an in-flight top-up nobody photographed? Or is the true operational reach of this fighter simply greater than the export brochures admit? For a country about to base its entire air defense future on this machine, that mystery is not trivia. It is a question worth billions. But this next part is the piece that changes the whole map. Because a fleet of world-class fighters is worthless if an enemy can catch them on the ground and turn them into scrap metal before they ever take off. Iran knows this better than anyone. They watched it happen to Iraq. They understand, from painful experience, that against an adversary with air superiority, your aircraft parked in the open are simply targets waiting for a bomb. So, they went underground. Literally. In early 2023, Iran unveiled something it called OGAB 44, Eagle 44. It is the country's first underground airbase, and it is not a bunker or a hardened hangar. It is a base carved deep inside a mountain range in the south of the country, close to the Persian Gulf and within striking reach of the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which a fifth of the world's oil flows. Inside that mountain sit vast hangars, command centers, maintenance zones, fuel and weapons depots, all shielded by hundreds of meters of solid rock designed to shrug off even the most powerful conventional bombs in the American arsenal. The facility was built to do one thing above all: survive the first strike, and then hit back within minutes. Right now, that mountain reportedly shelters Phantoms, drones, and a fleet of Su-24 bombers, and it is widely expected to become home to the incoming Su-35s. Think about what that combination means. A survivable, dispersed, deeply buried force of modern fighters and strike bombers, sitting directly on top of the world's most important oil artery, ready to launch retaliation the moment anyone opens fire. Now, do not overlook those Su-24s, because they are far more dangerous than their 1970s airframe suggests. The Su-24 is an old Soviet swing-wing bomber, but Iran has done to it what Iran does best. It has upgraded and armed it with domestic weapons. Reports indicate these bombers carry an Iranian-built, long-range, air-launched cruise missile, a weapon designed specifically to punch through heavy fortifications, alongside the Nasser anti-ship missile for going after vessels in the Gulf. Add electronic warfare pods designed to scramble enemy radar and communications, and that aging bomber becomes a genuine threat to both fixed installations and warships. It flies low, it flies fast, and it carries a punch that a museum piece has no business carrying. And here is a question I want you to sit with, Because it splits opinion right down the middle. Does buying 60 foreign fighters actually make Iran stronger? Or does it make Iran dependent? Because every one of those Sukhois needs Russian parts, Russian software, Russian technicians. The very trap that strangled the old Tomcat fleet after 1979 could close again if Moscow ever decides to turn off the tap. So which is the smarter path for a sanctioned nation? A shining foreign fighter it cannot fully control, or a homegrown aircraft it owns from nose to tail? Drop your answer below because serious people disagree hard on this one. That question brings us to the aircraft that almost nobody outside the region talks about, the Kausar. While the world obsessed over Iranian drones and ballistic missiles, Iran quietly rolled out its own piloted combat jet, built domestically, and it entered mass production back in 2018. Now the Kausar is not going to dogfight an F-35 and win. Let us be honest about that. But its very existence tells you something important. It proves Iranian capability reaches beyond cheap drones and rockets into actual manned aircraft that fly and fight. And there is a clever wrinkle to it. The Kausar was deliberately designed to look, on radar and to the eye, remarkably like the old American F-5 Tiger. That is not laziness. That is deception baked into the airframe, meant to muddy the picture for any adversary trying to sort real threats from decoys in a crowded sky. It carries a domestically developed engine for supersonic speed and a modern digital cockpit. Sanctions were supposed to cripple Iranian aviation. Instead, Iranian engineers treated them as a challenge, and out came a jet nobody expected them to be able to build. This is the heart of Iran's whole military philosophy. And if you miss this, you miss everything. Iran does not try to match the Americans jet for jet. It knows it cannot. Instead, it fights asymmetrically. It builds swarms of small, cheap drones. It fields surface-to-surface missiles by the hundreds. It combines low-flying, radar-mimicking aircraft with electronic jammers, and the whole point is to overwhelm and confuse a technologically superior enemy rather than beat him in a fair fight. Quantity, deception, and saturation against quality. That is the doctrine. The Su-35 does not replace that doctrine. It adds a heavyweight puncher on top of it. If this kind of breakdown is what you come here for, you already know what to do with it. Now let us flip the board and look across the water, because Iran is not planning against an empty sky. It is planning against the single most powerful military machine ever assembled. The American presence in that region is staggering. In moments of high tension, the United States has surged multiple nuclear-powered supercarriers into nearby waters, each one a floating airbase carrying dozens of strike aircraft, backed by land-based F-15 strike variants, F-16s, and the two crown jewels of American air power, the F-22 Raptor and the F-35. And the American playbook against a country like Iran is well understood. Strike first, strike hard, and blind the enemy before he can react. The opening move is always to shred the integrated air defense network, the radars and command bunkers that tie everything together, so that everything behind it goes deaf and blind. Take down the eyes, and the fighters behind them are flying into a dark room. Let me tell you about the aircraft that leads those opening strikes, because its stealth is almost hard to believe. The F-22 Raptor is the only pure air superiority fighter the Americans field, and its numbers border on absurd. Twin engines producing around 70,000 pounds of thrust vectoring nozzles, and the ability to cruise faster than sound without even lighting its afterburners. But the real magic is invisibility. Its radar signature is reportedly around 15 times smaller than the F-35 and roughly 100 times smaller than China's J-20. On a radar screen, the Raptor is barely a whisper, closer to a bird than a fighter. And there is a story that proves it, one that actually happened. Back in 2013, an Iranian F-4 Phantom was moving to intercept an American drone over the Gulf. What that Iranian crew did not know was that an F-22 was already there. The Raptor slid in completely undetected, flew up underneath the Phantom, close enough to visually inspect the weapons hanging under its wings, then calmly pulled alongside and radioed the Iranian pilots to advise them to go home. They never saw it coming. They only heard the voice. Let that sink in for a second. An entire enemy interception, watched from a few feet away by an aircraft the defenders could not detect at all. That is the wall Iran's new Sukhois have to fly into. Not a fair fight, a stacked one. So imagine how the modern contest actually plays out. And here the picture gets genuinely fascinating. Picture a scenario in which Iranian Su-35s attempt to press an attack against an American carrier operating in the Arabian Sea. The carrier does not just point its guns and hope. It goes silent. American warships can declare an emissions control condition, shutting down active radars and transmissions so that the enemy loses the electromagnetic breadcrumbs it was following. Then, the ship deploys towed decoys, buoys, reprogrammed to broadcast false electromagnetic signatures, essentially painting a fake warship in the water for incoming missiles to chase. The real target vanishes. The ghost target lights up, and a fighter that flew all that way to sink a carrier ends up hurling its weapons at empty ocean. That is the true nature of this war, if it ever comes. It is not about who has the faster jet. It is about who controls the information, who sees whom first, and who can lie most convincingly to a missile's seeker head. And this is precisely why so many analysts remain skeptical that the Sukhois are the miracle Tehran hopes for. A great fighter with a great radar is still just one node in a battle. If the network feeding it is jammed, blinded, or fed lies, then thrust vectoring and a 200-mile radar do not save you. The Americans and Israelis do not plan to dogfight Iran's new jets. They plan to unplug the whole system before those jets even understand what is happening. Which forces the hard geopolitical question. Where does this actually leave the region? The tension between Iran and Israel is at a pitch where open conflict is treated by many as not a matter of if, but when. Layer in shifting American administrations and the on-again, off-again pressure of heavy sanctions that squeeze Iran's economy and its ability to fund its network of regional proxies. Then, add the quiet hand of China, which has continued buying Iranian oil in enormous quantities, and, according to multiple reports, has helped feed Iran's missile program with critical chemical ingredients for solid rocket fuel. The money that buys Sukhois has to come from somewhere, and increasingly, it comes from barrels shipped east. So, step back and look at the whole board. On one side, a nation that watched its proud Air Force rot under sanctions for 40 years, that learned to build its own jets and drones out of sheer necessity, and that is now bolting a fleet of world-class Russian fighters onto a survivable, mountain-buried base sitting on top of the world's oil supply. On the other side, an American and Israeli war machine built around stealth, electronic deception, and the doctrine of blinding an enemy before he can lift a finger. The Su-35 is real. The threat is real. The underground base is real. But whether 60 imported fighters can actually shift the balance, or whether they simply become the next generation of expensive hardware caught on the ground and jammed into irrelevance, is the argument that will define the next decade over that region. So, here is where I leave it with you. And I genuinely want to see the room divide on this. Does the Su-35 finally give Iran a real fighting chance in its own skies? A jet dangerous enough to make any adversary hesitate before crossing into Iranian airspace? Or is it a beautiful, costly illusion? A machine that looks lethal on paper, but is destined to be blinded, decoyed, and neutralized by an enemy that fights the information war better than anyone alive? Pick a side and tell me why. I read the comments, and this is exactly the kind of fight I want to watch play out down there.